Question 1. Analysis of best practices for managing CPU and memory resources for virtual machines in a VMware vSphere 8. X environment, considering performance, stability, and efficiency, leads to the evaluation of several resource allocation strategies. Which of the following represents the most effective and professionally sound approach? Option A. Proactively monitor virtual machine resource consumption, analyze performance metrics, and implement resource pools with appropriate reservations, limits, and shares to ensure predictable performance and efficient resource utilization. Option B. Increase the number of XC hosts in the cluster to accommodate potential future resource demands without detailed analysis of current utilization. Option C. Disable all CPU and memory resource controls to allow virtual machines unrestricted access to host resources, preventing any potential resource contention issues. Option D. Aggressively enable memory ballooning and swap to disk for all virtual machines to maximize memory reclamation and reduce the need for additional hardware. Correct answer is A. Proactively monitor virtual machine resource consumption, analyze performance metrics, and implement resource pools with appropriate reservations, limits, and shares to ensure predictable performance and efficient resource utilization. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in virtualized environments, balancing performance optimization with resource availability and cost efficiency. The professional's task is to evaluate different approaches to managing virtual machine resource allocation, specifically CPU and memory, in a VMware vSphere 8. X environment. The challenge lies in understanding the nuanced impact of various resource management techniques on application performance, infrastructure stability, and operational costs, all while adhering to best practices and potential internal service level agreements, SLAs, or organizational policies, which are implicitly governed by the principles of efficient IT resource utilization and service delivery expected within a professional IT context. The correct approach involves a proactive and data-driven methodology. It prioritizes understanding the actual resource consumption patterns of the virtual machines through monitoring and analysis, implementing resource pools with appropriate reservations and limits, and utilizing shares to define relative priority, allows for granular control, and ensures that critical workloads receive guaranteed resources while preventing resource starvation for less critical ones. This approach aligns with best practices for resource management in vSphere, promoting stability, predictable performance, and efficient utilization of underlying hardware. It avoids over-provisioning, which leads to wasted resources and increased costs, and under-provisioning, which degrades application performance and user experience. The underlying principle is to match resource allocation to actual need, a fundamental tenet of sound IT infrastructure management. An incorrect approach would be to indiscriminately apply aggressive memory ballooning or swap to disk for all virtual machines without prior analysis. While these mechanisms can reclaim memory, their overuse can lead to significant performance degradation due to increased I/O operations and latency, negatively impacting application responsiveness and user experience. This approach fails to consider the specific needs of individual workloads and can inadvertently violate implicit SLAs for application performance. Another incorrect approach is to simply increase the number of hosts without assessing current resource utilization. This is a brute force method that ignores potential inefficiencies in resource allocation on existing hardware and can lead to unnecessary capital expenditure and increased operational overhead. It represents a failure to optimize existing resources before scaling. A third incorrect approach is to disable all resource controls and allow virtual machines to consume resources without any limits. This can lead to noisy neighbor problems where one or a few VMs consume excessive resources, impacting the performance of all other VMs on the same host and potentially causing instability. This demonstrates a lack of proactive management and a disregard for fair resource distribution. The professional decision-making process should involve a systematic evaluation of the current state, identification of performance bottlenecks or inefficiencies, and the selection of management techniques that address these issues without introducing new problems. This includes leveraging vSphere's built-in monitoring tools, understanding the application dependencies and performance requirements, and iteratively applying and testing resource management strategies. The goal is to achieve a state of optimal resource utilization that meets performance objectives while remaining cost-effective and stable. Question 2. Risk assessment procedures indicate a potential for significant disruption to critical business services due to hardware failures within the primary vSphere 8X data center. A comprehensive disaster recovery strategy needs to be implemented to ensure minimal data loss and rapid service restoration. Which of the following approaches best addresses the identified risks and aligns with industry best practices for disaster recovery in a vSphere 8X environment? Option A. Establish a schedule for performing full backups of all virtual machines to an off-site location, with a manual process for restoring services in the event of a disaster. Option B. Focus on implementing high availability (HA) and fault tolerance (FT) within the primary data center to mitigate hardware failures and defer disaster recovery planning to a later stage. Option C. Configure asynchronous replication of virtual machines to a secondary site, without establishing specific RPO and RTO targets or conducting regular recovery testing. Option D. Implement a solution that continuously replicates virtual machines to a secondary site, with a documented and regularly tested failover and failback procedure that meets defined recovery point objectives, RPO, and recovery time objectives, RTO. Correct answer is D. Implement a solution that continuously replicates virtual machines to a secondary site, with a documented and regularly tested failover and failback procedure that meets defined recovery point objectives, RPO, and recovery time objectives, RTO. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the critical nature of data integrity and availability within a virtualized environment, directly impacting business operations and compliance. The need to implement a robust disaster recovery strategy for vSphere 8X environments requires careful consideration of various technical and procedural factors. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it aligns with the principles of business continuity and disaster recovery planning, which are often mandated by industry regulations and internal governance frameworks. Specifically, a well-defined RPO and RTO, coupled with a tested and documented recovery plan, ensures that data loss is minimized and service restoration is timely, thereby meeting compliance obligations and maintaining stakeholder trust. This proactive and systematic approach demonstrates due diligence and risk mitigation. An incorrect approach that relies solely on manual backups without a defined recovery strategy fails to address the RTO requirement, potentially leading to extended downtime and significant business impact. This oversight can result in regulatory noncompliance if service-level agreements or industry standards for data availability are not met. Another incorrect approach, focusing only on replication without regular testing of the recovery process, introduces a significant risk of failure during an actual disaster. The untested nature of the recovery plan means that the RPO and RTO may not be achievable, leading to data loss and prolonged outages, which can have severe financial and reputational consequences and potentially violate data protection regulations. A third incorrect approach, neglecting to document the recovery procedures, creates a dependency on specific individuals and increases the likelihood of errors or omissions during a stressful recovery event, jeopardizing the entire disaster recovery effort and potentially leading to non-compliance with audit requirements. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes understanding business requirements, RPO/RTO, evaluating available technologies against these requirements, developing a comprehensive and tested plan, and ensuring clear documentation and regular review. This iterative process ensures that the implemented solution is effective, efficient, and compliant. Question 3. Market research demonstrates that organizations are increasingly adopting VMware vSphere 8X for its advanced features, but also face challenges in upgrading existing environments without impacting critical business operations or data integrity. A financial services firm is planning to upgrade its vSphere environment from version 7X to 8X. This environment hosts sensitive customer financial data and is subject to strict regulatory oversight regarding data protection and service availability. The IT team is considering several approaches for the upgrade. Which approach best balances the need for technological advancement with the imperative to maintain data integrity and regulatory compliance? Option A. Schedule the upgrade during a weekend with minimal expected user activity, performing an in-place upgrade of all components simultaneously to minimize the overall upgrade window. Option B. Upgrade only the XC hosts to version 8X first deferring the vCenter server upgrade until a later date to reduce the complexity of the initial upgrade phase. Option C. Implement a phased upgrade strategy, starting with a new vSphere 8X environment in a separate cluster, migrating virtual machines incrementally using vMotion, and establishing a robust rollback plan before decommissioning the old environment. Option D. Perform a direct in-place upgrade of the vCenter server and SC hosts, followed by immediate migration of critical virtual machines to the new environment. Correct answer is D. Perform a direct in-place upgrade of the vCenter server and SC hosts, followed by immediate migration of critical virtual machines to the new environment. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the critical nature of data integrity and the potential for significant business disruption if data is compromised during a vSphere upgrade. The challenge lies in balancing the need for timely system updates with the imperative to safeguard sensitive customer data and maintain compliance with data protection regulations. Careful judgment is required to select an upgrade strategy that minimizes risk while achieving the desired technological advancements. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes data integrity and minimizes downtime through a phased, non-disruptive upgrade. This aligns with the principle of least privilege and due diligence in IT operations, ensuring that changes are implemented cautiously and with robust rollback capabilities. By leveraging vSphere's built-in features for live migration and minimal disruption, the organization upholds its responsibility to maintain service availability and data security, which are fundamental to customer trust and regulatory compliance. This proactive and risk-averse strategy is essential for maintaining operational continuity and adhering to the spirit of responsible data stewardship. An incorrect approach that involves a direct in-place upgrade without thorough testing and a rollback plan presents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Such an approach disregards the potential for unforeseen compatibility issues or data corruption, which could lead to a breach of data confidentiality and integrity. This failure to implement adequate safeguards violates the implicit contract of trust with customers and could contravene data protection laws that mandate reasonable security measures to prevent unauthorized access or loss of personal data. Furthermore, it demonstrates a lack of professional due diligence, exposing the organization to reputational damage and potential legal repercussions. Another incorrect approach, performing the upgrade during peak business hours without a comprehensive rollback strategy, is also professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a disregard for business continuity and the potential impact on customer operations. It fails to acknowledge the critical importance of minimizing service interruption, a key tenet of IT service management, and a factor often considered in regulatory compliance regarding service availability. The ethical failure lies in prioritizing expediency over the stability and reliability of services that customers depend on, potentially leading to financial losses for those customers and a breach of service-level agreements. The professional reasoning process for making such decisions should involve a thorough risk assessment, considering the potential impact of each upgrade strategy on data integrity, system availability, and regulatory compliance. This includes evaluating the technical feasibility, the availability of rollback mechanisms, and the potential for downtime. Professionals should consult relevant VMware best practices and documentation, as well as any applicable industry standards or regulatory guidelines related to data handling and system upgrades. A phased approach with extensive testing in a non-production environment, followed by a carefully planned rollout with clear rollback procedures, is generally the most prudent and professionally responsible course of action. Question 4. Research into the implementation of a VMware vSphere 8X upgrade on a critical production environment reveals a potential for data corruption if specific upgrade sequences are not followed. The primary concern is ensuring the integrity of virtual machine data and maintaining compliance with data protection clauses within the VMware Professional Services Agreement. What is the most professionally responsible approach to mitigate the risk of data corruption and ensure compliance during this upgrade? Option A. Implement the upgrade in a phased manner across non-critical virtual machines first, then proceed to critical systems without extensive pre-upgrade testing in a separate environment. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive upgrade simulation in a dedicated, isolated lab environment that mirrors the production setup, validating all upgrade steps and rollback procedures before commencing the production upgrade. Option C. Perform a full backup of all virtual machines and critical vCenter server data, then proceed with the upgrade on production systems, utilizing predefined rollback procedures if issues arise. Option D. Immediately initiate the upgrade on production systems, relying on the inherent resilience of vSphere 8X to handle potential data inconsistencies during the process. The correct answer is C. Perform a full backup of all virtual machines and critical vCenter server data, then proceed with the upgrade on production systems, utilizing predefined rollback procedures if issues arise. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the critical nature of data integrity and the potential for regulatory noncompliance if data is not handled appropriately during a vSphere upgrade. The need to maintain data availability and prevent data loss while adhering to strict data protection regulations, such as those potentially governed by a hypothetical VMware professional services agreement, or similar contractual obligations that would implicitly require adherence to data handling best practices, makes careful planning and execution paramount. The challenge lies in balancing the technical requirements of the upgrade with the non-negotiable need for data security and compliance. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes data integrity and minimizes risk through a phased, validated process. This involves thorough testing in a non-production environment to identify and resolve potential issues before impacting live data. The use of snapshots and backups before and during the upgrade provides a safety net, allowing for rollback in case of unforeseen problems. This methodical approach aligns with the principle of due diligence expected in professional IT services, ensuring that all reasonable steps are taken to protect client data and maintain service continuity. Such practices are implicitly required by professional standards and contractual agreements that mandate a high level of care and responsibility. An incorrect approach that involves proceeding with the upgrade on production systems without prior validation in a test environment represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This demonstrates a disregard for data integrity and a failure to exercise due diligence. It exposes the client to an unacceptable risk of data loss or corruption, which could lead to breaches of contractual obligations and potentially violate data protection regulations if sensitive information is compromised. This approach shows a lack of professional responsibility and a failure to adhere to industry best practices for system upgrades. Another incorrect approach, such as relying solely on automated rollback mechanisms without manual verification or comprehensive backups, is also professionally unacceptable. While automation can be beneficial, over-reliance without human oversight and robust contingency planning can lead to undetected failures or incomplete recovery. This can result in data inconsistencies or loss that automated systems may not fully rectify, again risking contractual breaches and regulatory noncompliance. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a risk assessment framework. This includes identifying potential failure points, evaluating the impact of those failures on data integrity and service availability, and developing mitigation strategies. Prioritizing data protection and compliance should be the guiding principle. Professionals must always advocate for and implement solutions that demonstrably protect client data and meet all applicable regulatory and contractual requirements, even if it means a more time-consuming or resource-intensive approach. This involves clear communication with stakeholders about risks and proposed mitigation strategies. Question 5. Benchmark analysis indicates that a significant number of XC hosts within the vSphere 8X environment are exhibiting inconsistent security configurations, potentially exposing the organization to compliance risks and security vulnerabilities. The IT security team has tasked the vSphere administrator with standardizing these configurations across all hosts to meet internal security policies and external regulatory requirements. The administrator needs to implement a solution that is scalable, auditable, and minimizes the risk of manual errors during deployment and ongoing management. Option A. Manually configure the security settings on each XC host individually, ensuring each setting matches the documented security policy. Option B. Develop and deploy a standardized host profile that encapsulates the required security settings and use it to audit and remediate all XC hosts. Option C. Create a new security configuration document, and then instruct each administrator to manually apply these settings to the hosts they manage, without a centralized validation mechanism. Option D. Implement a new set of firewall rules at the network perimeter to block any traffic that might exploit the identified security inconsistencies on the ESXi hosts. The correct answer is B. Develop and deploy a standardized host profile that encapsulates the required security settings and use it to audit and remediate all ESXi hosts. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in large-scale vSphere environment where maintaining consistent security configurations across numerous hosts is critical. The challenge lies in balancing the need for rapid deployment and standardization with the inherent risks of misconfiguration, especially when dealing with sensitive security settings like host profiles. The professional difficulty arises from the potential for widespread security vulnerabilities if a profile is incorrectly applied, or if the process of updating profiles is not rigorously managed. This requires a deep understanding of vSphere security best practices, the implications of host profile management, and the potential impact on compliance and operational stability. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging VMware's built-in host profile functionality to create a standardized security configuration, and then applying this profile to all ESXi hosts. This method represents best professional practice because it ensures consistency, reduces manual errors, and facilitates compliance with security benchmarks. Host profiles allow for the definition of desired security states, such as specific firewall rules, user access controls, and logging settings. By creating a master host profile and then checking compliance and remediating non-compliant hosts, administrators can systematically enforce security policies. This aligns with the principle of least privilege and defense in depth, minimizing the attack surface. The process of creating, testing, and deploying host profiles is designed to be auditable and repeatable, which is essential for maintaining a secure and compliant infrastructure. Incorrect approach is analysis. Manually configuring security settings on each ESXi host individually is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach is prone to human error, leading to inconsistencies in security posture across the environment. Such inconsistencies can create exploitable gaps, violating the organization's duty to maintain a secure system and potentially leading to data breaches. It also makes auditing and compliance reporting extremely difficult and time-consuming, failing to meet regulatory requirements for demonstrable security controls. Implementing a security configuration that is not tested against a representative set of hosts before broad deployment is another critical failure. This bypasses essential validation steps, increasing the risk of introducing widespread misconfigurations or incompatibilities that could compromise security or disrupt operations. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to adhere to best practices for change management and risk mitigation. Relying solely on network-level security controls without hardening the ESXi hosts themselves is insufficient. While network security is important, it does not address vulnerabilities at the host level. This approach leaves the hosts exposed to potential threats that bypass network defenses, failing to implement a comprehensive security strategy and potentially violating security mandates that require host-level hardening. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach this challenge by first understanding the specific security requirements and compliance mandates applicable to their organization. This involves identifying critical security configurations that need to be standardized. The next step is to research and select the most appropriate VMware vSphere features for achieving this standardization, with host profiles being a primary consideration for ESXi host security. A robust testing methodology is crucial. This includes creating a baseline configuration, testing it in a lab or non-production environment, and then performing a phased rollout to production, closely monitoring for any adverse effects, continuous monitoring for compliance drift, and a well-defined remediation process are also essential components of a mature security operations framework. Question 6. Stakeholder feedback indicates that the current manual process for deploying new virtual machines is too slow, hindering the rapid iteration required for development and testing environments. However, the organization is subject to strict data protection regulations that mandate specific security configurations and logging for all deployed systems. What is the most effective approach to accelerate VM deployment while ensuring adherence to these regulatory requirements. Option A. Develop and utilize hardened VM templates that incorporate all required security configurations and compliance settings, and integrate these templates into an automated deployment workflow using vSphere customization specifications. Option B. Implement network-level security controls and firewalls around the vSphere environment, assuming that internal VM configurations can be addressed on a best-effort basis after deployment. Option C. Prioritize speed by deploying VMs with minimal initial configuration and schedule manual security hardening and compliance checks to be performed by the operations team within 48 hours of deployment. Option D. Bypass initial security hardening during template creation to expedite deployment, with a plan to address security configurations during the first major patch cycle. The correct answer is A. Develop and utilize hardened VM templates that incorporate all required security configurations and compliance settings, and integrate these templates into an automated deployment workflow using vSphere customization specifications. Explanation: Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in enterprise environments where the rapid deployment of new virtual machines, VM, is critical for business agility, but it must be balanced against the need for robust security and compliance. The challenge lies in ensuring that the automated provisioning process, while efficient, adheres to established security baselines and regulatory requirements without becoming a bottleneck. Stakeholder pressure for speed can lead to shortcuts that compromise security posture, creating a significant risk. The professional challenge is to design and implement a solution that automates deployment while embedding security controls and auditability, thereby satisfying both operational efficiency and compliance mandates. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves integrating security hardening and compliance checks directly into the VM template and the automated deployment workflow. This ensures that every VM provisioned inherits the necessary security configurations and meets regulatory standards from its inception. By leveraging vSphere's capabilities for template management, customization specifications, and potentially integration with configuration management tools like Ansible, Chef, or Puppet, which are common in professional vSphere environments, security baselines can be enforced automatically. This aligns with the principle of security by design and compliance by default, which are best practices for modern IT infrastructure. This approach minimizes the risk of human error during manual configuration, ensures consistency, and provides an auditable trail of security configurations applied during deployment, which is crucial for regulatory compliance. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to rely solely on post-deployment manual security patching and configuration by the operations team. This introduces a significant delay between VM creation and its secure state, leaving a window of vulnerability. It also increases the risk of inconsistent configurations across VMs due to human variability and potential oversight, which can lead to compliance failures. Another incorrect approach is to bypass security hardening during the initial template creation to speed up deployment, with the intention of addressing it later. This is a direct violation of security best practices and regulatory requirements that mandate secure configurations from the moment a system is operational. The later often never comes, or is done inconsistently, leading to a perpetually insecure environment. A third incorrect approach is to implement security controls only at the network perimeter, assuming that internal VMs are inherently trusted. This is a flawed security model that does not account for internal threats or lateral movement of attackers. Regulatory frameworks often require granular security controls applied at the host and application level, not just at the network edge. Professional reasoning. Professionals must adopt a proactive and integrated approach to security and compliance. The decision-making process should prioritize embedding security and compliance into the automated workflows from the outset. This involves understanding the specific regulatory requirements applicable to the environment, identifying the security controls necessary to meet those requirements, and then designing automated processes and VM templates that enforce these controls consistently. Regular review and updates of templates and automation scripts are also essential to adapt to evolving threats and regulatory landscapes. The goal is to achieve a balance between agility and security, ensuring that speed of deployment does not come at the expense of a secure and compliant infrastructure. Question 7. which approach would be most appropriate for migrating a critical vSphere 8X production environment to new hardware and an updated vSphere version, ensuring minimal downtime and data integrity. Option A. Perform the migration during off-peak hours, moving virtual machines one by one without prior staging or extensive testing, and only using backups if a critical failure occurs. Option B. Directly implement the new vSphere version and hardware in the production environment, relying on existing backups for rollback if issues arise. Option C. Schedule a single, extended maintenance window to perform a complete Big Bang migration of all virtual machines and storage to the new hardware and vSphere version. Option D. Implement a phased migration strategy using vSphere vMotion and storage vMotion to move workloads to the new infrastructure incrementally, with thorough testing in a staging environment prior to production queued over. The correct answer is D. Implement a phased migration strategy using vSphere vMotion and storage vMotion to move workloads to the new infrastructure incrementally, with thorough testing in a staging environment prior to production queued over. Explanation. The scenario presents a common implementation challenge in vSphere environments, ensuring data integrity and availability during a critical infrastructure upgrade. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for rapid deployment of new hardware and software with the imperative to minimize disruption to ongoing business operations and protect sensitive data. This requires a thorough understanding of vSphere's capabilities, potential failure points, and the regulatory landscape governing data protection and service availability. The correct approach, which involves a phased, non-disruptive migration strategy leveraging vSphere vMotion and storage vMotion, represents best professional practice. This method aligns with industry standards for high availability and disaster recovery, ensuring that critical services remain accessible throughout the upgrade process. It minimizes the risk of data loss or extended downtime, thereby adhering to implicit regulatory expectations for business continuity and data integrity. By performing thorough testing in a staging environment before production rollout, professionals demonstrate due diligence and risk mitigation, which are foundational ethical and professional obligations. This approach prioritizes the stability and security of the production environment, a key tenet of responsible IT management. An incorrect approach that involves a Big Bang migration with a planned downtime, while seemingly efficient, carries significant professional and ethical risks. Such an approach fails to adequately address the potential for unforeseen issues during the queued over, which could lead to extended downtime and data loss, potentially violating service-level agreements, SLAs, and regulatory requirements for data availability. It demonstrates a lack of foresight in risk management. Another incorrect approach, which skips the staging environment and directly implements changes in production, is professionally unacceptable. This bypasses critical validation steps, significantly increasing the likelihood of introducing errors or incompatibilities that could destabilize the production environment. This reckless disregard for testing and validation constitutes a failure in professional due diligence and could lead to severe operational and reputational damage, and potentially violate data protection regulations if data is compromised. A further incorrect approach, which relies solely on backups for recovery without a clear, tested rollback plan, is also professionally deficient. While backups are essential, they are a reactive measure. A robust professional approach necessitates a proactive strategy that minimizes the need for recovery in the first place, and if recovery is needed, a well-defined and tested rollback procedure is crucial to quickly restore service with minimal impact. Relying solely on backups without a comprehensive plan demonstrates a reactive rather than proactive stance, which is not best professional practice. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes risk assessment, meticulous planning, phased implementation, and continuous validation. This involves understanding the business impact of potential disruptions, evaluating the technical feasibility and risks of different migration strategies, and selecting the approach that best balances efficiency with the paramount need for data integrity and service availability. Adherence to established best practices and a commitment to minimizing risk are critical for maintaining professional credibility and ensuring compliance with implicit regulatory expectations. Question 8. The review process indicates that a critical production virtual machine is experiencing intermittent performance degradation. To diagnose the issue, a senior systems administrator believes they need direct, elevated access to the virtual machine's operating system and its underlying storage configuration within the VMware vSphere 8X environment. However, the standard operational procedures and security policies strictly prohibit direct administrative access to production VMs without explicit, documented approval from the security and compliance teams, and require that any granted access be time-bound and narrowly scoped. The administrator is concerned that the delay in obtaining formal approval might exacerbate the performance issues for end users. What is the most appropriate course of action for the senior systems administrator? Option A. Proceed with granting themselves full administrative privileges to the virtual machine and its associated storage, as the urgency of the performance issue justifies bypassing standard approval processes for a limited time. Option B. Obtain explicit documented authorization for temporary, narrowly scoped administrative access to the virtual machine, ensuring all actions are logged and access is revoked immediately upon completion of the troubleshooting. Option C. Access the virtual machine's sensitive data and configuration files directly using elevated privileges without seeking formal authorization, believing that the troubleshooting effort will resolve the issue before any potential security concerns are raised. Option D. Inform the end users about the ongoing performance issues and advise them to avoid using the affected virtual machine until a solution can be implemented through the standard, albeit slower, approval process. Correct answer is B. Obtain explicit documented authorization for temporary, narrowly scoped administrative access to the virtual machine, ensuring all actions are logged and access is revoked immediately upon completion of the troubleshooting. Explanation. This scenario presents an ethical dilemma concerning data privacy and security within a VMware vSphere 8X environment, specifically touching upon the principle of least privilege and the potential for unauthorized access. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for troubleshooting with the long-term security posture and compliance requirements. A professional in this role must navigate the temptation to bypass established security protocols for expediency, recognizing that such actions can have significant repercussions. The correct approach prioritizes adherence to established security policies and regulatory frameworks by documenting the request, obtaining explicit authorization, and ensuring the access granted is temporary and strictly limited to the necessary scope. The professional upholds the principles of accountability, transparency, and least privilege. This aligns with best practices for data protection and security, minimizing the risk of data breaches or misuse. In the context of VMware vSphere 8X, this would involve leveraging role-based access control, RBAC, features to grant specific, time-bound permissions rather than broad administrative access. An incorrect approach that grants broad administrative access without proper authorization or documentation fails to uphold the principle of least privilege. This creates an unnecessary security risk, as the administrator now has the potential to access or modify any data or configuration within the vSphere environment, far beyond what is required for the immediate troubleshooting task. This could lead to accidental data corruption, unauthorized data access, or even malicious activity, all of which would be regulatory and ethical failures. Another incorrect approach, which involves accessing sensitive data without explicit authorization, even if for troubleshooting, constitutes a direct violation of data privacy regulations and ethical conduct. This bypasses all security controls and creates a significant risk of unauthorized disclosure or misuse of sensitive information. Such actions erode trust and can lead to severe legal and reputational damage. A professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Understanding the immediate need and the potential risks. 2. Consulting established security policies and relevant regulatory guidelines. 3. Seeking appropriate authorization for any deviation from standard procedures. 4. Implementing the minimum necessary access for the shortest required duration. 5. Thoroughly documenting all actions taken. 6. Reviewing and revoking access promptly after the task is completed. This structured approach ensures that operational needs are met while maintaining a robust security posture and adhering to ethical and regulatory obligations. Question 9. The analysis reveals that a VMware vSphere 8X administrator has identified a critical security vulnerability in a third-party management application that is integral to the organization's automated patching and configuration processes. While the administrator understands the potential for significant disruption and data compromise, they are also aware that the standard internal reporting procedure for such issues can be protracted. Considering the urgency, what is the most professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Attempt to independently develop and deploy a workaround or fix for the vulnerability without vendor confirmation or internal approval. Option B. Directly contact the vendor of the third-party application to request an expedited patch, bypassing internal security review. Option C. Delay reporting the vulnerability until a convenient time, prioritizing ongoing operational tasks over immediate security concerns. Option D. Immediately report the vulnerability to the internal security team and follow the established incident response and vendor notification protocols. The correct answer is D. Immediately report the vulnerability to the internal security team and follow the established incident response and vendor notification protocols. Explanation. The analysis reveals a scenario where a senior VMware administrator, responsible for a critical vSphere 8X environment, discovers a potential security vulnerability in a third-party management tool integrated with vSphere. This tool, while not directly part of the core vSphere installation, is essential for automated patching and configuration management across the virtual infrastructure. The vulnerability, if exploited, could allow unauthorized access to sensitive virtual machine data and potentially disrupt critical business operations. The administrator is aware that reporting this vulnerability internally through the established channels might lead to delays in remediation due to bureaucratic processes and resource allocation challenges. The temptation exists to bypass these channels and directly contact the vendor of the third-party tool to expedite a fix, potentially circumventing internal security review and approval processes. This scenario is professionally challenging because it pits the administrator's immediate responsibility for system security and operational continuity against established organizational policies and procedures. The administrator must balance the urgency of a potential security breach with the need for due diligence, proper authorization, and adherence to internal controls. The potential consequences of inaction, a security breach, are severe, as are the potential consequences of bypassing established protocols, unauthorized system changes, potential introduction of new risks, and disciplinary action. The correct approach involves meticulously following the organization's established incident response and vulnerability management policies. This means documenting the discovered vulnerability, assessing its potential impact, and reporting it immediately to the designated internal security team or IT leadership. This team will then initiate the formal process of vendor notification, risk assessment, and remediation planning, ensuring that any actions taken are authorized, documented, and aligned with the organization's overall security posture. This approach represents best professional practice because it upholds the principles of accountability, transparency, and adherence to governance frameworks. It ensures that security incidents are handled systematically, with appropriate oversight and collaboration, minimizing the risk of unintended consequences and maintaining the integrity of the IT infrastructure. An incorrect approach would be to directly contact the vendor of the third-party tool without informing or involving the internal security team. This bypasses critical internal controls and established communication channels. It represents a failure to adhere to organizational policies regarding incident reporting and vendor management. Such an action could lead to unauthorized changes being made to the environment, potentially introducing new vulnerabilities or conflicts with existing security measures. Furthermore, it undermines the authority and responsibility of the internal security team, hindering their ability to effectively manage and mitigate risks across the entire IT landscape. Another incorrect approach would be to attempt to fix the vulnerability independently without vendor confirmation or internal approval. This could involve modifying the third-party tool's code or configuration, which is highly risky. It could lead to system instability, data corruption, or render the tool inoperable, causing significant operational disruption. This approach demonstrates a lack of understanding of the potential downstream impacts of unauthorized modifications and a disregard for the established processes for software and system updates. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Identify and document the issue clearly. 2. Assess the immediate risk and potential impact. 3. Consult and adhere to organizational policies and procedures for incident reporting and vulnerability management. 4. Communicate findings and concerns through the appropriate internal channels. 5. Collaborate with relevant teams, security, operations, vendor management, to develop and implement a remediation plan. 6. Ensure all actions are authorized, documented, and tested before deployment. 7. Learn from the incident to improve future processes. Question 10. The performance metrics show a critical application experiencing significant latency, impacting user productivity. A colleague suggests a direct modification to a vSphere host's network configuration to bypass a perceived bottleneck, a change that bypasses the standard change control and approval process. What is the most appropriate course of action for the vSphere administrator? Option A. Immediately implement the colleague's suggested network modification to resolve the performance issue as quickly as possible. Option B. Advise the colleague that the performance issue is not critical and can be monitored without immediate intervention. Option C. Implement the colleague's suggested network modification and document it after the fact to ensure the fix is recorded. Option D. Escalate the issue to management and the change advisory board, proposing an expedited but documented change request for the proposed network modification, outlining the risks and benefits. The correct answer is D. Escalate the issue to management and the change advisory board, proposing an expedited but documented change request for the proposed network modification, outlining the risks and benefits. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the conflict between immediate operational needs and the long-term integrity of the virtualized environment, as well as potential data privacy implications. The administrator is faced with a situation where a critical application is experiencing performance degradation, and a quick fix is requested. However, the proposed solution, while seemingly effective in the short term, bypasses established change management procedures and potentially introduces security vulnerabilities or compliance risks. The correct approach involves adhering to the established change management process, which is a cornerstone of IT governance and operational stability. This process ensures that all changes are documented, reviewed, tested, and approved before implementation, minimizing the risk of unintended consequences. In the context of VMware vSphere 8, X-Professional, this aligns with best practices for maintaining a secure, reliable, and compliant infrastructure. Specifically, it upholds principles of accountability, risk management, and due diligence, which are often implicitly or explicitly required by IT governance frameworks and potentially by specific industry regulations concerning data handling and system availability. By following the process, the administrator demonstrates a commitment to professional responsibility and the protection of the organization's assets and data. An incorrect approach would be to immediately implement the proposed workaround without proper authorization or testing. This action represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It bypasses the established controls designed to prevent system instability, security breaches, and data corruption. Such a deviation from procedure could lead to a violation of internal policies, potentially contravening compliance requirements related to change control and system auditing. Furthermore, it demonstrates a lack of professional judgment by prioritizing a quick fix over a systematic and secure resolution, thereby increasing the risk of future, more severe incidents. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the performance issue entirely, hoping it resolves itself. This is a failure of professional responsibility and could lead to significant business disruption and potential data loss. It also neglects the duty to maintain the operational integrity of the systems under the administrator's care. A third incorrect approach would be to implement the workaround and then attempt to retroactively document it. While documentation is important, the act of bypassing the approval process is the primary failure. Retroactive documentation does not mitigate the risks introduced by the unapproved change and can be seen as an attempt to conceal a procedural violation. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the organization's IT governance policies, including change management, incident management, and security protocols. When faced with a critical issue and a proposed rapid solution, the administrator should first assess the urgency and potential impact of the problem. If the situation warrants immediate action beyond standard procedures, the administrator should escalate the issue to the appropriate stakeholders, clearly outlining the problem, the proposed solution, and the associated risks. This escalation should seek explicit approval for an expedited change, even if it deviates from the norm. The decision should always be guided by the principle of minimizing risk to the organization's systems, data, and compliance posture, rather than solely by the desire for a quick resolution. Question 11. The assessment process reveals a critical security vulnerability in a third-party management tool integrated with a production vSphere 8X environment. The administrator has the technical capability to implement an unsupported workaround to mitigate the immediate risk, but this could affect future vendor support. What is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Implement the unsupported workaround immediately to address the security risk and document the action for future reference. Option B. Escalate the vulnerability to the security team and the vendor, and propose the unsupported workaround as a temporary measure while awaiting official guidance, ensuring all actions are documented. Option C. Ignore the vulnerability and wait for the vendor to release a patch, assuming it will be addressed in a future update. Option D. Immediately disable the third-party management tool to eliminate the risk, without assessing the impact on other operational functions. The correct answer is A. Implement the unsupported workaround immediately to address the security risk and document the action for future reference. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a situation where a senior VMware administrator, responsible for a critical production vSphere 8X environment, discovers a potential security vulnerability in a third-party management tool integrated with vCenter Server. This tool, while not directly part of the core vSphere product, is essential for automated patching and compliance reporting. The administrator has the technical expertise to develop a workaround that mitigates the immediate risk, but this workaround is not officially supported by the vendor and could potentially impact future vendor-provided updates or support. The dilemma lies in balancing immediate security needs with long-term operational stability and adherence to vendor guidelines. The correct approach involves a structured process of risk assessment, communication, and documentation. This aligns with best practices for IT governance and security management, emphasizing transparency and informed decision-making. By immediately escalating the issue to the relevant stakeholders, security team, vendor, management, and clearly documenting the discovered vulnerability and the proposed workaround, the administrator ensures that the organization can make an informed decision about the risk. This approach prioritizes organizational security while respecting vendor relationships and maintaining a clear audit trail. It also adheres to the principle of least privilege and responsible disclosure, ensuring that potential risks are managed proactively and collaboratively. An incorrect approach would be to implement the unsupported workaround without proper authorization or communication. This action, while seemingly addressing the immediate security concern, carries significant risks. It bypasses established change management processes, potentially violating internal IT policies and compliance frameworks. Furthermore, it creates an undocumented configuration that could lead to unforeseen issues during future vendor updates or support engagements, potentially voiding warranties or support contracts. This also represents a failure in professional responsibility by not involving the appropriate parties in risk management decisions. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the vulnerability, hoping it goes unnoticed or is resolved by the vendor in a future release. This is a direct abdication of professional responsibility and a significant security risk. It demonstrates a lack of diligence and a failure to uphold the duty of care to protect the organization's assets. This inaction could have severe consequences if the vulnerability is exploited, leading to data breaches, service disruptions, and reputational damage. A third incorrect approach would be to immediately disable the third-party tool, without assessing its full impact or exploring alternatives. While this might seem like a decisive action, it could cripple essential operational functions like patching and compliance reporting, leading to significant business disruption. This approach lacks the nuanced analysis required to balance security with operational continuity and could be seen as an overreaction without proper due diligence. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that includes identifying the problem, assessing the risks and impacts, exploring potential solutions, consulting with relevant stakeholders, documenting all actions and decisions, and implementing the chosen solution with appropriate change control. This structured approach ensures that decisions are well-informed, defensible, and aligned with organizational policies and ethical standards. Question 12. During the evaluation of a performance issue within a VMware vSphere X environment, a critical log file is identified as potentially containing the root cause. This log file, however, includes customer-specific configuration details and potentially identifiable information. A third-party vendor specializing in VMware performance analysis requires access to this log file to provide their expertise. What is the most appropriate course of action to ensure compliance and protect sensitive data? Option A. Anonymize or pseudonymize the log file to remove or obscure any personally identifiable information before sharing it with the vendor. Option B. Provide the raw, unedited log file to the vendor, assuming they have their own internal data protection measures. Option C. Share the log file with a colleague in a different department who has general IT knowledge, but is not directly involved in this troubleshooting effort. Option D. Inform the vendor that the log file cannot be shared due to its sensitive nature, and attempt to troubleshoot the issue internally without their assistance. The correct answer is A. Anonymize or pseudonymize the log file to remove or obscure any personally identifiable information before sharing it with the vendor. Explanation. This scenario presents an ethical dilemma concerning data privacy and compliance within a virtualized environment. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate operational need for troubleshooting with the stringent requirements of data protection regulations. Professionals must navigate the potential for unauthorized access and disclosure of sensitive information, which could have severe legal and reputational consequences. The correct approach prioritizes adherence to established data handling policies and regulatory frameworks. By anonymizing or pseudonymizing the data before sharing it with the vendor, the professional upholds the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, ensuring that only necessary information is accessed and that its link to individuals is severed or obscured. This aligns with the spirit and letter of data privacy laws, which mandate robust protection of personal data. An incorrect approach would involve directly sharing the raw log files containing potentially sensitive customer data with the vendor without proper sanitization. This constitutes a direct violation of data privacy regulations, as it exposes personal information to a third party without explicit consent or a legitimate legal basis. Such an action could lead to significant fines, legal action, and a loss of customer trust. Another incorrect approach, sharing the data with a colleague who is not directly involved in the troubleshooting and has not undergone the necessary data privacy training, also represents a breach. This exposes the data to unnecessary risk and violates the principle of least privilege, where access to sensitive information should be restricted to those who absolutely require it for their duties. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the core ethical and regulatory obligations. This involves understanding the specific data privacy laws applicable to the organization and the data being handled. Next, assess the risks associated with each potential course of action, considering the likelihood and impact of a data breach. Finally, select the option that minimizes risk, maximizes compliance, and upholds ethical standards, even if it requires additional effort or time. Question 13. The efficiency study reveals that a specific configuration change in VMware vSphere 8 X could significantly reduce operational costs by decommissioning a portion of the existing storage infrastructure. However, the proposed change has not undergone a formal security review, and there is a concern that it might inadvertently expose sensitive data or violate data residency regulations. What is the most appropriate course of action for the IT team? Option A. Defer the cost-saving initiative until a later date when resources are available to thoroughly investigate all potential security implications, even if it means foregoing immediate savings. Option B. Implement the configuration change, assuming that existing security measures will adequately protect the data, and document the change for future review. Option C. Proceed with the configuration change to realize immediate cost savings and address any security or compliance issues that may arise afterward. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive security and compliance risk assessment for the proposed configuration change and explore alternative, compliance solutions for cost reduction before implementing any changes. The correct answer is C. Proceed with the configuration change to realize immediate cost savings and address any security or compliance issues that may arise afterward. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a conflict between a desire for immediate cost savings and the long-term implications of compromising security and compliance. The pressure to reduce operational expenses is a common business challenge, but it must be balanced against the fundamental responsibility to protect sensitive data and adhere to regulatory mandates. The challenge lies in identifying solutions that are both cost-effective and compliant, rather than sacrificing one for the other. The ethical dilemma arises from the potential for a shortcut to have significant negative consequences, impacting data integrity, customer trust, and legal standing. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a thorough risk assessment and adherence to established security protocols and VMware best practices. This aligns with the principles of responsible IT management and the implicit regulatory expectation to maintain a secure and compliant environment. By investigating alternative, compliant solutions, the IT team demonstrates a commitment to due diligence and a proactive approach to security. This strategy ensures that any implemented changes do not introduce vulnerabilities or violate data protection regulations, thereby safeguarding the organization's assets and reputation. This approach reflects best professional practice by embedding security and compliance into the decision-making process from the outset. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing the proposed change without a comprehensive security review and without exploring alternative, compliant solutions represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Bypasses critical due diligence steps, potentially exposing the organization to data breaches, non-compliance penalties, and reputational damage. This approach demonstrates a disregard for established security frameworks and regulatory requirements, prioritizing short-term cost savings over long-term risk mitigation. Suggesting the change and then addressing security concerns reactively is also an ethically unsound and professionally irresponsible approach. Security and compliance should not be an afterthought. This reactive stance increases the likelihood of overlooking critical vulnerabilities and can lead to costly remediation efforts after an incident has occurred. It signals a lack of foresight and a failure to integrate security into the operational lifecycle. Ignoring the security implications entirely and proceeding with the cost-saving measure is the most egregious failure. This demonstrates a blatant disregard for data protection, privacy, and regulatory obligations. Such an action could lead to severe legal repercussions, financial penalties, and a complete erosion of trust with customers and stakeholders. It is a direct violation of professional ethics and responsible IT governance. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a dilemma should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with understanding the full scope of the proposed change, including its potential risks and benefits. This involves consulting relevant documentation, security policies, and regulatory guidelines. The next step is to conduct a thorough risk assessment, identifying potential vulnerabilities and compliance gaps. Subsequently, exploring alternative solutions that meet both cost and security/compliance objectives is crucial. If a compliant solution cannot be found within the desired budget, the professional should escalate the issue, clearly articulating the risks associated with the cost-saving measure and advocating for a balanced approach that prioritizes security and compliance. This process ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with organizational responsibilities. Question 14. Market research demonstrates that understanding competitor operational efficiencies is crucial for strategic advantage. As a VMware vSphere 8, ex-professional managing a client's virtualized infrastructure, you notice patterns in their performance metrics that, if analyzed deeply, could reveal insights into their operational strategies and potential weaknesses. Your employer has expressed interest in understanding the broader market landscape. You have the technical capability to extract and analyze this data from your client's environment to infer these market trends. What is the most ethically sound and professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Extract anonymized performance data from the client's environment and share aggregated, non-identifiable patterns with your colleagues to contribute to a general understanding of industry trends, ensuring no single client can be identified. Option B. Analyze the client's performance metrics to infer market trends, framing it as a way to identify potential areas for improvement within the client's own environment that could indirectly benefit your employer by showcasing your firm's expertise. Option C. Subtly guide the client's operational decisions based on your inferred market insights to align with your employer's strategic objectives, without explicitly revealing the source of your information. Option D. Refuse to analyze the client's internal performance metrics for market research purposes, citing professional ethics and client confidentiality. Instead, suggest exploring publicly available market reports or engaging in legitimate competitive analysis that does not involve proprietary client data. The correct answer is D. Refuse to analyze the client's internal performance metrics for market research purposes, citing professional ethics and client confidentiality. Instead, suggest exploring publicly available market reports or engaging in legitimate competitive analysis that does not involve proprietary client data. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical obligation to maintain data integrity and client confidentiality, particularly within the context of a regulated industry. The VMware vSphere 8 X professional is entrusted with sensitive operational data. The temptation to leverage this data for competitive advantage, even if seemingly benign or framed as beneficial to the employer, directly conflicts with professional ethics and potentially regulatory requirements concerning data handling and intellectual property. The correct approach prioritizes adherence to established professional conduct guidelines and contractual obligations, recognizes that while market research is valuable, the method of acquiring that research must be ethical and legal. Specifically, it upholds the principle of not using proprietary or confidential client information for unauthorized purposes. This aligns with the overarching ethical frameworks that govern IT professionals, emphasizing trust, integrity, and responsible use of privileged access. By refusing to exploit the data and instead suggesting legitimate, ethical methods for market analysis, the professional demonstrates a commitment to best practices that safeguard client interests and maintain professional reputation. An incorrect approach that involves analyzing the client's internal performance metrics to infer market trends for the benefit of a competitor or for the professional's own gain represents a significant ethical and potentially regulatory failure. This action breaches confidentiality agreements and constitutes a misuse of privileged information. Such a breach erodes trust, can lead to legal repercussions for both the individual and their employer, and violates the fundamental ethical duty to act in the best interest of the client whose data is being managed. Another incorrect approach, which might involve subtly influencing the client's operational decisions based on the inferred market trends to align with the professional's employer's strategic goals, is equally problematic. This constitutes a conflict of interest and manipulative practice. It prioritizes the professional's employer's agenda over the client's independent decision-making and operational autonomy, undermining the integrity of the professional relationship and potentially leading to suboptimal outcomes for the client. A third incorrect approach, such as sharing anonymized but still identifiable operational patterns with colleagues in a way that could be pieced together to reveal sensitive information, also fails to uphold professional standards. While anonymization is a step towards privacy, the risk of re-identification or the aggregation of seemingly innocuous data points to reveal proprietary insights remains. This demonstrates a lack of diligence in protecting confidential information and a disregard for the potential for unintended disclosure. The professional decision-making process in such situation should involve a clear understanding of ethical codes of conduct, contractual obligations, and relevant data privacy regulations. When faced with a request or an opportunity that seems to blur ethical lines, professionals should 1. Identify the core ethical principles at play, e.g., confidentiality, integrity, avoiding conflicts of interest. 2. Review relevant contractual agreements and company policies. 3. Consult with supervisors or ethics committees if unsure. 4. Prioritize transparency and honesty in all dealings. 5. Seek legitimate and ethical means to achieve business objectives, even if they require more effort. Question 15. Regulatory review indicates that a critical business application is experiencing intermittent performance degradation, impacting user productivity and transaction processing. The IT operations team has identified a recent, unannounced configuration change to a core network device as a potential cause. The immediate priority is to restore optimal performance while adhering to established operational integrity and auditability standards. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory requirements for process optimization and incident management in a VMware vSphere 8 X professional environment? Option A. Escalate the issue to senior management for a directive on how to proceed, bypassing the standard incident response and change management procedures. Option B. Proceed with further undocumented configuration adjustments on the network device to attempt to mitigate the performance issues, prioritizing speed of resolution over formal process. Option C. Immediately revert the network device configuration to its previous state without further analysis, then initiate a formal incident investigation and root cause analysis. Option D. Engage the network engineering team to collaboratively analyze the recent configuration change, document all diagnostic steps and proposed remediation actions, and implement a controlled rollback or fix with a clear rollback plan. The correct answer is C. Immediately revert the network device configuration to its previous state without further analysis, then initiate a formal incident investigation and root cause analysis. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT operations where performance degradation impacts business-critical applications. The professional's responsibility extends beyond simply resolving the immediate issue to ensuring compliance with operational standards and regulatory requirements for service availability and data integrity. The challenge lies in balancing the urgency of restoration with the need for a controlled, documented, and compliant remediation process. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, evidence-based investigation aligned with established IT service management (ITSM) principles, which are often implicitly or explicitly referenced in regulatory frameworks governing operational resilience and data protection. By engaging the appropriate technical teams, documenting all actions, and performing a root cause analysis (RCA), the professional ensures that the resolution is not only effective, but also contributes to preventing future occurrences and meets auditability requirements. This methodical process is crucial for demonstrating due diligence and adherence to operational integrity standards. An incorrect approach that bypasses standard change control procedures and immediate rollback without proper analysis poses significant regulatory and ethical risks. Such actions can lead to unintended consequences, further system instability, and potential data corruption, violating principles of data integrity and system availability mandated by various operational compliance standards. Furthermore, failing to document the incident and resolution process hinders auditability and can be interpreted as a failure to maintain adequate operational controls, potentially leading to non-compliance with service-level agreements, SLAs, and regulatory mandates for incident management. Another incorrect approach that involves making extensive, undocumented configuration changes in a production environment without a clear rollback plan is highly problematic. It directly contravenes best practices for change management, which are fundamental to maintaining system stability and security. Such actions increase the risk of introducing new, unforeseen issues, potentially leading to extended downtime and data loss. From a regulatory perspective, this demonstrates a lack of control over the production environment, which can have severe implications for compliance with data protection and business continuity regulations. The professional decision-making process should involve a structured incident response framework. This includes immediate containment and stabilization, followed by a thorough investigation to identify the root cause. All actions taken, especially those impacting production systems, must be logged and, where possible, follow a defined change management process. Post-incident, a comprehensive RCA and lessons learned exercise are essential to refine operational procedures and prevent recurrence. This systematic approach ensures that operational integrity is maintained, regulatory obligations are met, and the business can rely on the stability and availability of its IT infrastructure. Question 16. The control framework reveals that a critical business application hosted on VMware vSphere 8 X is experiencing intermittent performance degradation, impacting user productivity. While the application team suggests increasing the allocated CPU and memory resources for the virtual machine to resolve the issue, the IT governance policy mandates a focus on resource optimization and cost efficiency, requiring demonstrable evidence of necessity for resource expansion. Which of the following represents the most professionally sound approach to address this performance degradation while adhering to the established control framework and governance policies? Option A. Immediately increase the CPU and memory resources allocated to the virtual machine, as recommended by the application team, to ensure immediate resolution of the performance issue and minimize business impact. Option B. Reallocate resources from less critical virtual machines to the affected application's virtual machine, assuming that other workloads have sufficient overhead to absorb the reduction. Option C. Focus solely on optimizing the application's code and configuration settings without investigating the vSphere infrastructure, assuming the virtualized environment is adequately provisioned. Option D. Conduct a thorough performance analysis of the virtual machine and its underlying vSphere infrastructure to identify specific resource bottlenecks or inefficiencies. Establish baseline performance metrics, and then implement targeted, data-driven adjustments to resource allocations or configurations, followed by revalidation. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough performance analysis of the virtual machine and its underlying vSphere infrastructure to identify specific resource bottlenecks or inefficiencies. Establish baseline performance metrics, and then implement targeted, data-driven adjustments to resource allocations or configurations, followed by revalidation. Explanation. The control framework reveals a common challenge in large VMware vSphere environments: the need to optimize resource allocation and performance without compromising security or compliance. In this scenario, the challenge lies in balancing the desire for increased application performance through resource over-provisioning with the regulatory requirement for efficient resource utilization and cost management, as mandated by internal IT governance policies and potentially external industry standards for cloud resource management. Careful judgment is required to avoid both performance bottlenecks and wasteful expenditure, which can have financial and operational implications. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a data-driven, iterative process aligned with established performance tuning methodologies. By establishing baseline metrics, identifying specific performance deviations, and implementing targeted adjustments with subsequent validation, administrators ensure that optimizations are effective, measurable, and do not introduce unintended negative consequences. This systematic approach directly supports the principle of efficient resource management, a key tenet of responsible IT operations and often a compliance requirement. It also aligns with the VMware best practices for performance tuning, which emphasize a structured and validated methodology. An incorrect approach that involves indiscriminately increasing resource allocations without proper analysis is professionally unacceptable. This action directly violates the principle of efficient resource utilization, leading to increased operational costs and potentially violating internal policies or external regulations that mandate cost-effective infrastructure management. It also introduces unnecessary risk by consuming resources that may be needed elsewhere, potentially impacting other critical services. Furthermore, it bypasses the necessary validation steps, meaning the actual performance impact is unknown and could be negligible or even detrimental. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on application-level tuning without considering the underlying vSphere infrastructure, is also professionally flawed. While application tuning is important, performance issues often stem from or are exacerbated by the virtualized environment. Neglecting the vSphere layer means potential infrastructure-level bottlenecks, such as storage I/O contention, network saturation, or CPU ready time, are left unaddressed. This leads to suboptimal performance and inefficient resource utilization, failing to achieve the full benefits of optimization. The professional reasoning process for such situation should involve a structured problem-solving methodology. First, clearly define the observed performance issue and its business impact. Second, gather comprehensive performance metrics from both the application and the vSphere environment. Third, analyze these metrics to identify potential root causes, prioritizing those that align with efficient resource utilization and compliance requirements. Fourth, develop a plan for targeted adjustments, including baseline measurements and expected outcomes. Fifth, implement the changes in a controlled manner, followed by rigorous validation and remeasurement. Finally, document the process, outcomes, and any lessons learned to inform future optimization efforts. This iterative and data-driven approach ensures that optimizations are effective, compliant, and contribute to overall operational excellence. Question 17. Operational review demonstrates a consistent pattern of user-reported application slowdowns within a specific virtual machine cluster. The virtual machines are experiencing increased latency, impacting critical business operations. What is the most professional and effective approach to diagnose and resolve this issue? Option A. Contact the application vendor for immediate support. stating that the virtualized environment is likely the cause of the performance degradation. Option B. Proceed with a full vSphere upgrade to the latest patch version, believing that general system updates will resolve underlying performance issues. Option C. Immediately reconfigure the virtual machine network adapter settings to a higher throughput profile, assuming a network bottleneck is the primary cause. Option D. Initiate a deep dive into VMware vSphere performance metrics for the affected cluster and individual virtual machines, focusing on CPU, memory, disk I/O, and network utilization, while cross-referencing with application-level performance logs. The correct answer is D. Initiate a deep dive into VMware vSphere performance metrics for the affected cluster and individual virtual machines, focusing on CPU, memory, disk I/O, and network utilization, while cross-referencing with application-level performance logs. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT operations where performance degradation impacts user experience and potentially business continuity. The professional must balance the immediate need for resolution with the long-term implications of their chosen approach. The challenge lies in identifying the root cause of the performance issue without introducing further instability or violating established operational procedures and VMware best practices. The pressure to restore service quickly can lead to hasty decisions that overlook critical diagnostic steps or introduce unintended consequences. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic, data-driven investigation. This aligns with professional IT best practices and the principles of effective process optimization. By leveraging VMware's built-in diagnostic tools and performance monitoring capabilities, the professional can gather objective data on resource utilization, identify bottlenecks, and pinpoint the specific components, e.g., VM, host, storage, network, contributing to the slowdown. This methodical approach ensures that remediation efforts are targeted and effective, minimizing the risk of introducing new problems. It also supports compliance with operational standards that mandate incident management and root cause analysis. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a broad, unverified configuration change without proper diagnosis represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Such an approach bypasses established change management processes, which are crucial for maintaining system stability and auditability. It increases the risk of unintended consequences, potentially exacerbating the problem or affecting other systems. This is a direct violation of professional responsibility to act with due care and diligence. Similarly, immediately escalating to a vendor without performing initial troubleshooting demonstrates a lack of initiative and adherence to standard operating procedures for incident resolution. This can lead to unnecessary costs and delays, and it fails to demonstrate the professional's competency in diagnosing and resolving common issues. Finally, making assumptions about the cause without data is unprofessional and can lead to misallocation of resources and ineffective solutions, potentially violating service-level agreements, SLAs, and demonstrating a lack of commitment to accurate problem resolution. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach performance issues by first adhering to the organization's incident management framework. This typically involves clear steps for detection, diagnosis, containment, eradication, and recovery. The decision-making process should prioritize data collection and analysis using approved tools. If initial diagnostics do not yield a clear answer, then escalation to specialized teams or vendors should follow a defined protocol, ensuring all relevant information is documented and shared. This structured approach ensures accountability, minimizes risk, and promotes continuous improvement in operational processes. Question 18. Implementation of process optimization within a VMware vSphere 8X environment requires careful consideration of existing compliance mandates. Which of the following strategies best balances performance enhancement with regulatory adherence? Option A. Deploying third-party performance enhancement tools that promise significant gains without prior security or compliance validation. Option B. Aggressively tuning virtual machine parameters and host configurations to maximize resource utilization, with a secondary focus on performance metrics. Option C. Disabling non-essential logging and auditing features to reduce overhead and improve processing speed. Option D. Implementing a phased approach to optimization, starting with non-critical workloads, conducting thorough impact assessments against compliance requirements, and establishing clear rollback procedures before and after each change. The correct answer is D. Implementing a phased approach to optimization, starting with non-critical workloads, conducting thorough impact assessments against compliance requirements, and establishing clear rollback procedures before and after each change. Explanation: the scenario presents a challenge in optimizing VMware vSphere 8X environments for process efficiency without compromising security or compliance. The core difficulty lies in balancing performance gains with the stringent requirements of regulatory frameworks, which often dictate specific configurations and operational procedures. Professionals must navigate potential conflicts between aggressive optimization techniques and mandated controls. The correct approach prioritizes a phased, documented, and compliant implementation of process optimization. This involves thorough analysis of existing workloads, identification of bottlenecks, and the selection of optimization techniques that align with VMware best practices and any applicable regulatory mandates. Testing in a non-production environment, followed by a controlled rollout with comprehensive monitoring and rollback plans, ensures that performance improvements are achieved without introducing security vulnerabilities or violating compliance policies. This methodology represents best professional practice because it is systematic, risk-averse, and demonstrably adheres to the principles of responsible IT management and operational integrity, which are implicitly or explicitly required by regulatory bodies overseeing IT infrastructure. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on aggressive performance tuning without considering the underlying infrastructure's compliance posture is professionally unacceptable. This could lead to violations of data integrity, access control, or audit trail requirements mandated by regulations. For instance, disabling logging features to improve performance would directly contravene auditability requirements, a common regulatory concern. Another incorrect approach might involve implementing third-party optimization tools without rigorous vetting for security and compliance certifications, potentially introducing unapproved code or data handling practices, thereby failing to meet due diligence standards. A third incorrect approach, such as making significant configuration changes without proper change management, documentation, or rollback procedures, introduces unacceptable operational risk and hinders the ability to demonstrate compliance during audits. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the specific regulatory landscape applicable to their organization. This is followed by a comprehensive assessment of current vSphere configurations and workload performance. Optimization strategies should then be evaluated against both performance goals and compliance requirements. A risk assessment should be conducted for each proposed optimization, and a change management process must be strictly followed. Finally, continuous monitoring and validation are essential to ensure ongoing compliance and performance. Question 19. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a new vSphere 8X feature could significantly improve VM boot times and resource utilization, potentially reducing operational expenses. However, the implementation requires a brief, unscheduled downtime across the entire vSphere environment. What is the most professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Proceed with the implementation during a low-usage period, communicating the downtime to stakeholders in advance and having a rollback plan in place. Option B. Defer the implementation indefinitely due to the risk of unscheduled downtime, prioritizing absolute service continuity over potential efficiency gains. Option C. Implement the feature in a production environment without prior testing, relying on the vendor's documentation to address any issues that arise. Option D. Implement the feature immediately during business hours to capitalize on the potential cost savings as soon as possible, informing users after the fact. The correct answer is A. Proceed with the implementation during a low-usage period, communicating the downtime to stakeholders in advance and having a rollback plan in place. Explanation: this scenario presents a common challenge in IT operations, balancing the desire for enhanced performance and new features with the practical constraints of resource allocation and potential disruption. The professional is tasked with evaluating a proposed change that promises significant benefits, but also carries inherent risks and costs. The core of the challenge lies in making a decision that is not only technically sound, but also aligns with organizational objectives, risk tolerance, and adherence to established operational procedures. The correct approach prioritizes a thorough, phased implementation strategy that includes rigorous testing and validation. This aligns with best professional practices by minimizing risk, ensuring service continuity, and allowing for controlled adoption of new technologies. It demonstrates a commitment to due diligence, a fundamental ethical obligation in IT management to protect the integrity and availability of services. This approach also implicitly supports the principles of change management, which are crucial for maintaining stability and predictability within a complex IT environment. An incorrect approach that bypasses testing and validation introduces unacceptable risks. This failure to adequately assess the impact of changes can lead to service outages, data corruption, and security vulnerabilities, all of which have direct financial and reputational consequences for the organization. Such a disregard for established testing protocols constitutes a significant ethical lapse, as it prioritizes speed over the safety and reliability of the IT infrastructure. It also violates the implicit trust placed in IT professionals to manage systems responsibly. Another incorrect approach that focuses solely on the immediate cost savings without considering the long-term implications of potential performance degradation or increased support overhead demonstrates a myopic view. This can lead to hidden costs and reduced overall efficiency, failing to meet the organization's broader strategic goals. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that involves clearly defining the problem and objectives, identifying all potential solutions and their associated risks and benefits, evaluating these options against established criteria, including technical feasibility, cost, risk, and alignment with business goals, and selecting the option that offers the best balance of benefits and risks. This process should always incorporate feedback loops and contingency planning. Question 20. The audit findings indicate that certain critical applications are experiencing intermittent performance degradation, leading to increased user complaints and potential business impact. Analysis of the vSphere 8X environment reveals that while overall resource utilization appears within acceptable limits, specific virtual machines hosting these applications are not consistently receiving optimal resource allocation during peak demand periods. This suggests a potential issue with how vSphere is dynamically managing resources for these workloads. Which of the following approaches is the most effective and professionally sound method to address this process optimization challenge? Option A. Implement a policy to periodically restart all virtual machines hosting the critical applications during off-peak hours to clear any potential memory leaks or resource contention issues. Option B. Immediately increase the CPU and memory reservations for all virtual machines hosting the critical applications to ensure they always have dedicated resources, regardless of current demand. Option C. Rely on anecdotal evidence from online forums and community discussions to apply common performance tuning scripts and third-party tools to the vSphere environment without specific diagnostic data. Option D. Conduct a detailed review of Distributed Resource Scheduler (DRS) automation levels and cluster-wide affinity/anti-affinity rules, alongside an analysis of resource pool configurations and their associated shares, reservations, and limits, to identify and rectify any misconfigurations or suboptimal settings that may be hindering consistent resource allocation. The correct answer is D. Conduct a detailed review of Distributed Resource Scheduler (DRS) automation levels and cluster-wide affinity/anti-affinity rules, alongside an analysis of resource pool configurations and their associated shares, reservations, and limits, to identify and rectify any misconfigurations or suboptimal settings that may be hindering consistent resource allocation. Explanation. The audit findings indicate a potential bottleneck in the vSphere 8X environment, specifically related to the efficiency of resource allocation and task execution. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a deep understanding of VMware's process optimization capabilities within the context of the 2V0-21-23 exam scope, without resorting to simplistic or superficial solutions. The challenge lies in identifying the root cause of inefficiency and implementing a solution that aligns with best practices for performance and resource utilization, while also considering potential impacts on stability and security. The correct approach involves a systematic analysis of vSphere performance metrics and the application of advanced configuration tuning. This represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the identified inefficiencies by leveraging the sophisticated features of vSphere 8X. For instance, optimizing resource pools, DRS, distributed resource scheduler, settings and affinity rules can lead to more balanced workloads and improved application responsiveness. This proactive and data-driven method ensures that the environment operates at peak performance, minimizing waste and maximizing the return on investment in virtual infrastructure. Adherence to VMware's recommended practices and documentation, which are implicitly part of the exam's regulatory framework, is paramount. Incorrect approaches fail to meet professional standards due to their lack of rigor and potential for unintended consequences. Implementing a broad, untested change without proper analysis, such as indiscriminately increasing virtual machine resources, can lead to resource contention, increased costs, and potential instability. This disregards the principle of least privilege and efficient resource management. Another incorrect approach might be to simply restart services or virtual machines, which is a reactive measure that does not address the underlying process inefficiency and can lead to service disruptions. Relying solely on anecdotal evidence or common fixes, without validating them against the specific environment's performance data, is also professionally unsound, as it bypasses the necessary diagnostic steps and could introduce new problems. These actions demonstrate a failure to apply a structured problem-solving methodology and a disregard for the potential impact on the overall system's integrity and performance. A professional reasoning process for such situations should involve 1. Thoroughly understanding the audit findings and their implications. 2. Gathering comprehensive performance data from vSphere and relevant applications. 3. Analyzing this data to pinpoint the specific processes or configurations causing the inefficiency. 4. Researching and evaluating potential solutions based on VMware's official documentation and best practices. 5. Developing a phased implementation plan with rollback capabilities. 6. Testing the implemented changes rigorously and monitoring performance post-implementation. 7. Documenting all changes and their outcomes.